While we were about to put the episode out, we just got breaking news that casino, FBG Casino, has been arrested by the federal government. If you do not know who FBG Casino is, that is Future's brother. He is heavily involved in the FBG gang record label, and he's an ATL legend. The federal government alleges that they found 21 bricks, 21 kilograms of fit and 380,000 from Future's brother, FBG Casino.
Future's brother just walked out of federal custody. After facing life in prison just weeks ago, FBG Casino is back home.
Agents showed reporters what they say is 21 kilos of fentanyl recovered from inside the rental home. They also displayed $380,000 in cash they say was seized, along with another $3,000 found on a man who tried to run. The suspects are Rico DeVille Bryce and David Esteban Montillo Diaz. Both are expected to go before a federal grand jury for formal charges.
On December 2nd, Casino secured a $100,000 bond and got released to his sister's custody. This is the same man who was caught with 21 kilograms, over $380,000 in cash, and was facing mandatory minimum of 10 years behind bars.
Man, shout out to Casino, man. That's crazy, man. That's crazy work, man.
Crazy.
You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy, like, why, if Casino is over with an FBG label, he Future brother, why would he need to be selling, you know?
Because, hey, it's a money thing. He probably,
This situation involves FBG Casino, real name Rico DeVille Buis, Future's older brother who's been part of the FBG family since day one. The feds came with everything. FBI, DEA, local police, all working together in a massive federal operation. They built a case that could have locked him up for life. But now he's home, under house arrest, waiting for trial.
This is a federal case, which speaks to the gravity of the scenario and situation. This is a bit different than some of these guys who's been caught up on some of these state charges. This is like the feds coming to get you and you being caught with 20 bricks of fentanyl and $400,000.
This goes way deeper than what you saw on social media. From the moment federal agents kicked down doors in Forest Park, Georgia, to Casino walking out of custody just days ago, this story has turns nobody expected. Here's what actually went down. Let me break down the arrest, the charges, how he got out, and what this means for one of Atlanta's biggest rap families. Let's start from the beginning. To understand this, you've got to know who FBG Casino really is in the Atlanta rap scene. Rico DeVille Buis, known as FBG Casino, is Future's older brother and has been tied to FBG since the label's early days. Back in 2013, Casino was featured on Future's compilation mixtape FBG The Movie, which hit platinum status on DatPiff with over 250,000 downloads. He showed up on tracks that mattered, including being featured on Future's single Karate Chop, produced by Metro Boomin in 2013. But Casino wasn't just an artist. According to reports from Complex and other outlets, he also worked behind the scenes handling business operations for FBG, while his younger brother became one of the biggest names in hip-hop. Casino dropped his own projects over the years, including tracks like Cashed Out and collaborations with artists like 21 Savage on the song Deal. Those who followed FBG knew Casino stayed visible. He appeared on the Purple Rain Tour in 2015 and the All Summer 16 Tour in 2016. The Fader covered his mixtape releases, and he maintained a steady presence in Atlanta rap conversations. But according to multiple sources, Casino had stepped back from recording in recent years to focus on business ventures. Here's where things get complicated. Federal prosecutors later pointed out that Casino claimed to earn around $2,166 per month as a studio manager. At the same time, he was allegedly living in a $4 million home and driving multiple luxury cars, including a Mercedes and a BMW. The feds raised their eyebrows at those numbers real quick. Now this is when things really popped off. On Friday, November 14, 2025, FBI and DEA agents, along with Clayton County Police, executed a search warrant at a rental property in Forest Park, Georgia. This wasn't just a random bust. It was part of Operation Take Back America, a Homeland Security Task Force initiative targeting distribution networks across the country.
This all comes from an operation that occurred last Friday in Forest Park, Georgia, where FBI and DEA agents assigned to the HSTF arrested two men, Rico DeVille Bryce, aka Casino, and David Esteban Montillo Diaz. Defendant Bryce was caught fleeing from an Airbnb rental where agents were executing a federal search warrant. Bryce was carrying a rubber-banded stack of cash, about approximately $4,000, but a lot more banded cash, approximately $380,000 worth.
The choice of location matters here. Forest Park is a suburban city just south of Atlanta, about 15 minutes from the heart of downtown. It's not some random spot. The property was an Airbnb-style rental, which tells you something about how these operations work in 2025. No permanent address, no paper trail of ownership, just temporary rentals that can be abandoned quickly. The feds knew exactly what they were looking for when they showed up. According to federal court documents, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment operation. Law enforcement had been watching. They had enough evidence to convince a federal judge to sign off on a search warrant, which means they probably had surveillance, maybe informants, possibly wiretaps. By the time agents kicked in that door, they already knew what was inside. That's how federal investigations work. They don't raid properties hoping to find something. They raid because they already know. The timing of the raid is also significant. November 14th was a Friday. Federal agents love executing warrants on Fridays because it means suspects sit in custody over the weekend before they can see a magistrate judge on Monday. It's a tactical decision that gives law enforcement more time to process evidence and build their case before the first court appearance. What's interesting is that Casino wasn't alone. The co-defendant, David Esteban Montillo Diaz, being only 23 years old, suggests this operation involved multiple generations. You've got Casino at 41 and Diaz barely in his 20s. That age gap raises questions about the structure of the operation and who was running what. Federal prosecutors will definitely use that dynamic when they present their case. According to the criminal complaint filed in the Northern District of Georgia, Casino was inside the Airbnb-style rental with a co-defendant, 23-year-old David Esteban Montillo Diaz. When federal agents approached the property, prosecutors say Casino tried to bolt out a side door. He didn't make it far. Agents apprehended him outside the residence with approximately $4,000 in cash in his pockets. Inside the home, authorities uncovered what they described as a major operation. The search turned up 21 kilograms of the substance, including at least one brick stamped with a Louis Vuitton logo. That detail caught everyone's attention because it showed the kind of branding tactics being used in trafficking operations. But that wasn't all. Agents found $300,000 inside a cardboard box. Another $80,000 was stuffed inside a Goyard bag that investigators believed belonged to Casino. They even noted that the bag resembled one he had been photographed with on his Instagram account. The feds also seized a Glock 19, a money counter, and a food sealer, all pointing to what prosecutors called a well-organized distribution setup. The Goyard bag detail is particularly damaging. Goyard is a luxury French brand known for handbags that cost thousands of dollars. The fact that prosecutors could match the bag seized in the raid to one Casino posted on Instagram shows how thoroughly they prepared this case. They weren't just looking at the property, they were studying his social media, documenting his lifestyle, building a profile of his spending habits versus his claimed income. The money counter and food sealer are what prosecutors call indicia of trafficking. These aren't items you need for personal use. A money counter processes large amounts of cash quickly, something you need when you're dealing with transactions involving hundreds of thousands. A food sealer is commonly used to package substances for distribution because it keeps them airtight and prevents detection by scent. When federal agents find these tools alongside large quantities in cash, it's hard to argue personal use. The sheer amount of cash is also telling. $380,000 in cash is not normal, even for someone in the music industry. Most legitimate business transactions happen through banks, checks, or digital transfers. That much physical currency suggests transactions that can't go through traditional banking systems. The feds know this, and juries know this too. U.S. Attorney Theodore S. Hertzberg said at a press briefing, according to The Source and All Hip Hop, that the collaborative effort kept a staggering amount of harmful material from hitting the streets. He added that traffickers in the district may run, but they cannot hide, and instead will find themselves in federal custody with their proceeds seized. FBI Atlanta Special Agent in Charge Paul Brown echoed similar sentiments, calling the seizure a direct hit on operations that were putting lives at risk across the region. Casino and Diaz appeared in federal court on November 19, 2025. Both were charged with conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute, which carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years and a maximum of life in prison if convicted. The hip-hop community went quiet when the news broke. Twitter and Instagram lit up with reactions from fans and industry insiders. Some expressed shock, others pointed to the ongoing problems affecting rappers and their families. But notably, Future himself stayed silent. As of early December, there has been no public statement from Future about his brother's arrest, according to multiple outlets including Complex and The Source. The situation escalated quick. Federal prosecutors immediately filed a motion to keep Casino locked up with no bond. Their argument, the severity of the charges, the potential life sentence, and what they called a serious flight risk. Prosecutors laid out their case in the detention filing. They pointed to the discrepancy between between Casino's claimed income of $2,166 per month and his lavish lifestyle. Living in a $4 million mansion while earning barely over $2,000 a month, the government wasn't buying it. They argued this raised serious questions about the source of his wealth and made him an obvious flight risk. But here's where it gets interesting. On November 26th, a magistrate judge ordered that Casino should be released on bond. The government immediately asked for that decision to be reviewed, trying to keep him behind bars. They weren't backing down. But that's not even the craziest part. The case moved through the system fast. On December 2nd, after the review, Casino was approved for a $100,000 bond, secured by his girlfriend's home. According to Complex, he was released to the custody of his sister Brittany just days ago. But Casino isn't free to move around. While out on bond, he's on home incarceration. He can't leave the house without approval, except for medical appointments or court appearances. The conditions are strict. He's subject to location monitoring, must actively seek employment, and can't drink excessively. The feds are watching his every move. Right after his release, Casino posted on Instagram. He shared a video on FaceTime with young Scooter's son. The caption read, "Quit all the talk in UNC home, none else to it." He added the hashtag Omerta, the code of silence. That post alone told you everything about how he was moving after getting out. The hip-hop community started talking once he got out. Some people questioned how he secured bond so quickly on charges this serious. Rumors started flying about cooperation with authorities. Sources close to Casino, according to posts captured by Streetwork85NAF on Twitter, said his release came from strong legal representation, not from talking to feds. But in the streets, once those rumors start, they don't stop easy. The industry fallout has been quiet but noticeable. Casino's social media presence, which was once active with studio sessions and lifestyle posts, went from showing designer bags and luxury cars to a single post about being home. The Free Bands camp hasn't released any official statements about the arrest or the release. For a label that's usually vocal and visible, the silence speaks volumes. Radio stations in Atlanta covered the story extensively when he got arrested, and they covered it again when he got out. But there wasn't the usual back and forth you see with hip-hop beef or drama. This situation was different. It involved federal charges, not social media arguments. The tone shifted from entertainment news to something much more serious. But here's what most people missed in all the headlines about his release. Getting out on bond in a federal case like this is rare. When you're facing mandatory minimum of 10 years and caught with 21 kilograms, prosecutors usually keep you locked up until trial. The fact that a magistrate judge ordered his release, even after the government fought it, suggests Casino's legal team found something in the case to argue. The conditions of his release are tight. Home incarceration means he's essentially trading a jail cell for his house. The location monitoring tracks every move. If he steps outside without permission, he goes right back to federal custody, and the bond gets revoked. At 41 years old, Casino knows this might be his last chance at freedom before trial. Operation Take Back America isn't just about individual arrests. According to federal officials, this is part of a larger Homeland Security Task Force investigation targeting transnational criminal networks. The case files suggest prosecutors believe there could be wider supply networks involved, possibly with connections beyond state lines. The Louis Vuitton stamped packaging is a detail that reveals how sophisticated these operations have become. Branding tactics, luxury imagery, and designer logos are being used in ways that blur the lines between street culture and serious criminal enterprise. There's also the uncomfortable conversation about how prosecutors use lifestyle and social media against defendants. Casino's Instagram, showing designer bags and luxury cars, became evidence in the government's argument for keeping him locked up. In 2025, what you post online can and will be used in federal court. The intersection of rap culture, social media, and federal prosecution is getting more complicated every year. Sources close to the situation, speaking to various outlets, have noted this isn't Casino's first encounter with law enforcement, but it is his first time facing federal charges tied directly to this level of operation. The difference between state and federal cases is massive. Federal prosecutors have more resources, longer sentences, and a conviction rate that sits above 90%. Casino's connection to Free Bands and Future adds another layer. While Future has built an empire on music that references street life and substances, his brother now faces charges that could put him away for decades. The conversation online has touched on how the lifestyle portrayed in rap music intersects with real legal consequences. The money angle can't be ignored either. With $380,000 seized, plus the value of the substances and the property involved, we're looking at a case worth well over $1 million when you add everything up. Federal prosecutors aren't playing around with numbers like that. So that's where we're at with this whole situation. As of December 7th, 2025, Casino is out on bond, but essentially under house arrest. He's waiting for his trial date, which hasn't been set yet. His co-defendant, David Diaz, is also facing the same charges, and both both men are presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. The federal government is building its case, with the amount of evidence seized during the raid, including the substances themselves, the cash, the branded packaging, and Casino's own social media posts. Prosecutors believe they have a strong case. The detention hearing and bond arguments showed they're treating this as a major trafficking operation, not a small-time situation. Future continues to stay silent publicly. There's been no statement from Free Bands as an organization, no social media posts addressing the situation, nothing. In hip-hop, where artists usually speak up immediately about everything, this silence is loud. Keep your eyes on several things moving forward. First, whether Casino's legal team can negotiate a plea deal, or if this goes to trial. Federal cases rarely go to trial because of the government's high conviction rate, but with a potential life sentence on the table, the stakes are as high as they get. Second, watch if any other names get pulled into this investigation. Operation Take Back America is ongoing, and if prosecutors believe there's a wider network, more indictments could come down. The language in the criminal complaint suggests this might not be over. Third, the impact on Free Bands and Future's brand. While Future himself isn't implicated in any of this, having your brother facing federal charges creates complications. Business deals, partnerships, and public perception all get affected by association. The bigger picture here shows how enforcement is approaching hip-hop culture and street life in 2025. The feds are using social media, lifestyle imagery, and cultural associations as evidence in ways that would have been impossible a decade ago. Your Instagram posts, your music videos, your public persona, all of it can become part of a federal case. This also highlights the ongoing crisis affecting communities across America. Federal officials describe this seizure as potentially preventing thousands of harmful incidents. The amount seized in Casino's case represents a significant quantity that would have made it to the streets. For Casino, the road ahead is uncertain. He's facing a mandatory minimum of 10 years if convicted, with a maximum of life. At 41 years old, even a minimum sentence would be devastating. His legal team will have their work cut out for them. The hip-hop community is watching closely. This case represents more than just one person's legal troubles. It's about how success in rap culture, street credibility, and federal prosecution intersect in ways that can destroy lives and families. The lessons from Casino's case go beyond just one person or one family. This is about understanding the game at every level. The streets don't come with instruction manuals, and success doesn't erase where you came from. For every artist who makes it out clean, there are dozens of stories like Casino's where the past catches up in ways nobody expected. What makes this case particularly heavy is the timing. Casino had been around the industry for over a decade. He saw Free Bands grow from a crew to a legitimate label with major distribution deals. He watched his younger brother become one of the most influential artists of this generation. He had access to legitimate money, legitimate opportunities, and legitimate paths forward. But according to federal prosecutors, none of that was enough to keep him from the activities that led to November 14th. The hip-hop community has seen this movie too many times. From BMF to Supreme Team, from Shine's case to Bobby Shmurda's situation, the pattern repeats. Talent and success in music don't protect you from the consequences of what happens in the streets. If anything, being famous makes you a bigger target because prosecutors love high-profile cases. They send messages, they make examples, and they don't lose. Casino's legal team has their work cut out for them. Fighting federal charges isn't like fighting state cases. The resources are different, the sentences are longer, and the conviction rate speaks for itself. His lawyers will need to challenge every piece of evidence, question every witness, and find holes in an investigation that probably took months or even years to build. That Louis Vuitton stamped evidence, the cash in specific denominations, the money counter and food sealer, the location monitoring that probably tracked his movements. All of that adds up to a case the government feels confident taking to trial if necessary. The mandatory minimum sentencing is what makes federal cases particularly brutal. Even if Casino's lawyers negotiate a plea deal, they're working within constraints that don't exist in state court. 10 years is the floor, not the ceiling. At 41 years old, a decade minimum means he'd be over 50 when he gets out, assuming he only gets the minimum. For someone who spent his adult life in the music industry, that's essentially a career and a life lost. Future's position in all this is complicated in ways most people don't fully understand. On one hand, that's his blood, his older brother, someone who was there from the beginning. The loyalty and love don't disappear because of federal charges. On the other hand, Future has businesses, endorsements, partnerships, and a public image worth millions. One wrong statement, one appearance that looks like support for criminal activity, and sponsors start backing away. It's an impossible situation with no right answer. The Free Bands brand itself faces questions now. Labels and crews in hip-hop have always walked the line between street credibility and corporate legitimacy. You need the streets to stay authentic, but you need corporate partnerships to make real money. When someone in your organization catches a federal case this serious, that balance gets harder to maintain. Radio stations start asking questions. Streaming platforms take notice. Corporate partners get nervous. It's not fair, but it's reality. Looking at Casino's social media history, you can see how the lifestyle became part of the story. The designer bags, the luxury cars, the mansion, all of it was documented for thousands of followers to see. In the era of social media, every post is potential evidence. Every flex is a data point for investigators. Every public display of wealth raises questions about income sources. Casino's Instagram literally became exhibits in a federal case. That should be a wake-up call for everyone in the industry. The broader implications reach beyond just casino and free bands. Federal enforcement is changing how they approach hip-hop culture. They're using lyrics, music videos, social media posts, and public appearances as evidence in ways that blur the line between artistic expression and criminal admission. The question becomes, where does performance end and confession begin? When does a rap lyric become evidence of intent? These are conversations the industry needs to have because the legal system already decided where they stand. For young artists coming up watching this case, the message is clear. Everything you post, everything you say, everywhere you go, it can all be used against you. The feds have tools and resources that local police don't. They can track your phone, monitor your accounts, watch your movements, and build cases over years without you knowing. By the time they show up with warrants, the investigation is done. You're just finding out about something they've known for months. Casino's release doesn't mean he's free. It means he's got a few months to get his affairs in order before potentially going away for a long time. The government doesn't lose many federal cases. His best hope is a plea deal that reduces the sentence. But even that probably means years behind bars. The alternative is going to trial and risking life in prison if convicted. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about Casino getting released on bond? Does he have a real shot at beating these federal charges, or is the evidence too overwhelming? Should Future speak up publicly, or is staying silent the right move? How do you think this affects the whole free bands operation moving forward? Drop all your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to know where you stand on this. If this breakdown gave you the full story on Casino's release and kept it real from start to finish, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell too so you don't miss any updates on this case as it develops. Trust me, there's going to be more to this story, and you'll want to be here when the next chapter drops. Share this video with anyone who's been following Casino's case or anyone who needs to understand what really went down. The more people who know the full story, the better the conversations we can have about it. And if you want to see more deep dives like this on major hip-hop stories, let me know in the comments what situations you want me to break down next. I'm here to give you the facts without the fluff, and your support keeps this going. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.